Welcome to part 1 of the two-part series entitled Contemplative Verses, Echoes of the Poet Shelley, Vegetarian. Percy Bysshe Shelley is considered to be one of the most exceptional creative writers of the English language. In his relatively short human life, Shelley produced a voluminous output of work, mainly poems, but also prose literature, dramatizations, academic and philosophical essays, critical reviews, and English translations of both classical and contemporary authors, notably the works of Plato and Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. His genius continues to enthrall lovers of literature. Almost 200 years since his passing, he sparks inspiration with his innate ability to move the reader's hearts. Shelley added his uniquely human perspective on the phenomena of the natural world, and within the cycles of life and death, he glimpsed love and loss. In The Ode to the West Wind, stanza 4, Shelley reaches into the heavens above and peels away the foggy veil of life's mysteries to touch the essence of existence itself.
If I were a dead leaf thou mightest bear, if I were a swift cloud to fly with thee, a wave to pant beneath thy power and share the impulse of thy strength, only less free than thou, O uncontrollable, if even I were as in my boyhood, and could be the comrade of thy wanderings over heaven, as then when to outstrip thy skyey speed scarce seemed a vision, I would ne'er have striven, as thus with thee in prayer, in my sore need. Oh, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. I fall upon the thorns of life, I bleed. A heavy weight of hours has chained and bowed. One too like thee, tameless and swift and proud. Excerpt from Ode to the West Wind, stanza 4, by P.B. Shelley, Vegetarian.
Percy Bysshe Shelley was born into an upper-class English family in 1792. His father, Sir Timothy Shelley, was a knight and baron, as well as a member of the British Parliament. Shelley came to find the social world he had inherited to be a place of the highest privilege, but also the most intense burdens. He led a relatively happy early childhood as the eldest son, with 4 younger sisters and 1 much younger brother. Shelley was encouraged in the pursuits of the English gentry and showed an early aptitude for languages. He displayed an impressive memory and was also very interested in scientific experiments. On vacation at Field Place, his sisters would frequently be seen running from his gunpowder, acid, and lightning experiments. However, when Shelley's formal education began, he was often at odds with the English school system and was frequently bullied. In response, young Shelley absorbed himself in study, developing a reputation as a classical scholar. Dr. James Lind, a part-time instructor, was influential in Shelley's development during his senior year of Eton College, fostering his interest in the occult. During his final term at Eton, Shelley completed his novel Zastrozzi and won the admiration of his peers. Before enrolling at University College in Oxford in October 1810, Shelley's poetry collection, Original Poetry by Victor and Kezia, which he wrote with his sister Elizabeth, was published. He wrote a poem in 4 cantos with the title The Wandering Jew, published later in 1877, and the Gothic novel St. Irvyne, also known as The Rosicrucian, a romance. In these formative literary works, Shelley intently observes the human psyche at work within society, which led him to rebel against many of its ingrained institutions. He witnessed his fellow pupils following the codes of formal religion and an inherited political system without contemplating any real truths beyond those of the fixed parameters established by society. Shelley's pent-up and impetuous response to the world he found himself in was to produce highly provocative pamphlets and send them to notable individuals, including the university dean, who had him expelled. Percy Bysshe Shelley had already begun a deep investigation into philosophical systems that included metaphysics, attempting to uncover consistent truths about life and existence. He delved into the masterpieces of literature, becoming a lifelong devotee to classical Greek poets and scholars, such as Homer, Plutarch, and in later years, Plato, all the while absorbing a formidable literary knowledge of the classics to draw upon. At the age of 18, Shelley privately printed an epic poem entitled Queen Mab, dedicated to his first wife Harriet, and only intended for distribution amongst his closest friends. Queen Mab is a vision of future human potential, free of vice, in a utopian paradise. Juxtaposing Earth's past and present, Shelley examines the socially made institutional paralysis inflicted upon the population.
Thus do the generations of the earth go to the grave and issue from the womb, surviving still the imperishable change that renovates the world, even as the leaves which the keen frost wind of the waning year has scattered on the forest soil and heaped for many seasons there, though long they choke, loading with loathsome rottingness the land, all germs of promise. Yet when the tall trees from which they fell, shorn of their lovely shapes, lie level with the earth to moulder there, they fertilize the land they long deformed, till from the breathing lawn a forest springs, of youth, integrity and loveliness, like that which gave it life, to spring and die. Excerpt from Queen Mab, stanza 4, by P.B. Shelley, vegetarian.
The poem Queen Mab was only published publicly 2 years after Shelley's passing in 1824 as an early, youthful example of his uniquely brilliant literary style. Shelley himself was always reluctant to share the poem because he felt its critical nature was better fitted to injure than to serve the sacred cause of freedom. Being such a sensitive soul, driven by an inner spring of purity in his 29 years of life, he had discovered that merely believing in a set of ideals was not enough. Life had to be lived to the fullest measure, intensely, for better or for worse. Thus, he experienced many delights as well as a great deal of personal pain. He was also acutely aware of the suffering of others, whom he referred to as his fellow creatures. Shelley's deep contemplation during his formative years made him aware of the kinds of oppression that existed in the early 19th century, in particular the exploitation of his fellow creatures. He did not agree with how society continued to use animal people for food, and he became a vegetarian. In 1813, he published the pamphlet A Vindication of a Natural Diet.
Let the advocate of animal food force himself to a decisive experiment on its fitness, and as Plutarch recommends, tear a living lamb with his teeth, and plunging his head into its vitals, slake his thirst with the steaming blood. When fresh from the deed of horror, let him revert to the irresistible instincts of nature that would rise in judgment against it, and say, Nature formed me for such work as this. Then, and then only, would he be consistent. Excerpt from A Vindication of a Natural Diet by P.B. Shelley, vegetarian.
According to Shelley's good friend, Thomas Jefferson Hogg, Shelley began a vegetarian diet in March 1812, along with his first wife, Harriet Westbrook, at the University of Oxford. Between 1812 and 1813, Shelley met vegetarianism activist and devoted Zoroastrian John Frank Newton, who influenced his views on animal people rights.
He will embrace a pure system, from its abstract truth, its beauty, its simplicity, and its promise of wide extended benefit. Unless custom has turned poison into food, he will hate the brutal pleasures of the chase by instinct. It will be a contemplation full of horror and disappointment to his mind, that beings capable of the gentlest and most admirable sympathies should take delight in the death pangs and last convulsions of dying animals. Excerpt from A Vindication of a Natural Diet by P.B. Shelley, vegetarian.
We thank God for the gifted souls whose literary genius uplift us to this day, as we look forward to learning more about Percy Bysshe Shelley in the next part of our series.
Vegan, high morals evident.
Noble viewers, thank you for your wonderful company.